everybody. Welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and we're going to talk about some more C++ stuff. So, joining us fresh off of the GDC circuit, specifically C++ gaming stuff, I'm joined by David Li and Micheal Price. Hey, y'all.
Hey, Leslie, is great seeing you again.
I know it's been a minute. Shoot.
Yeah,
Like,
we've been working on some amazing stuff.
yeah, I'm excited to learn more. So, what is new in the world of C++ that we didn't cover in the What's New in C++ video not too long ago?
Yeah, I think out of that, we shared a lot of updates this year at GDC for Build Insights, Copilot, but we're definitely most excited for C++ dynamic debugging.
Awesome. Okay, so brief synopsis, TLDR, what is dynamic debugging? Why is it important?
Very common issue that game developers face is debugging their optimized builds. We heard a lot of feedback about seeing stepping not being reliable, not being able to see your locals. So, a lot of game developers out there hate seeing the variable is optimized away message.
Right.
Basically, the debugger gets in the way of doing things.
It's like I know it's optimized, but I still want to debug it anyway. Like
Yeah.
Right.
I just hate
And
it.
it's generally useful, right? But for game developers and specifically, right? They want to be running their games fully optimized, right? Because they
Right.
want that top frame rate. Because if it's not running at top frame rate, that's not the experience that their users are going to have, right? And so they want to be able to do that, but also debug their programs.
Exactly. We don't want Digital Foundry coming out out of the woodwork and dissing the perf. And to be punished for trying to debug something that is
Yep.
optimized just doesn't seem great either. So
Yeah.
how is
And
how are we doing that?
with C++ dynamic debugging, this is our attempt at alleviating a lot of the pains. So let's get started with our presentations. So when we're talking about debugging optimized code, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of issues, but the crux of what folks really want is no impact to their iteration time while debugging optimized builds. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is not only possible, that not only will you stop needing to spend so much time on rebuilding your game, thus increasing your iteration time, but now everything, it just works with full debuggability and uncompromised performance. And I'm here to introduce to you C++ dynamic debugging.
So I'm sure that game devs are familiar with this, right? Like you're debugging your program and something happens and you hit a breakpoint and then you look in your locals window and you see this really bad message, right? Breaks your heart. Variable is optimized away. Because like in the optimized code, that variable doesn't really exist, right? Like the optimizer made it so that it's not there, but your code still works like it's supposed to. And so, how would someone go about fixing this in the past, right? What they would do is they would stop their debugger. They would go into the source file that they think they need to debug. Hopefully, they get that right. They would add this pragma optimize directive somewhere in the file, and then they would rebuild, relink, rerun the program, get it back into the state that causes the bug, which that could take minutes, right?
That's very important.
And then hope, like, maybe it's even a race condition, right? Maybe it doesn't happen whenever things are, de-optimized. So, this was really brutal, right, on iteration time. It could take
Yeah.
something that if you could just do it, maybe it would take a couple of minutes, and it turned it into something that could take hours and hours and hours to do, right? So, with this brand new feature, you don't have to worry about this anymore. It's gonna work like you would think it would have worked if you didn't know any better, right? Uh,
Mhm.
we're gonna talk some more about that and how it works.
Yeah, and the team has been working, listening to not only your feedback, but working very closely with our first party studios, just to make sure this is really a feature that game developers want?
Yeah. So, for instance, Jess at the Coalition said the new feature is exceptional. They can now do all of the normal debugging things, stepping in and out, stepping over, being able to see locals and things you have in your watch window, being able to manipulate the program counter and set the next instruction without having to go all that through all that trouble of editing source code and doing a rebuild and such.
That's nice. I like the whole "it just works" vibe, and, I mean, debugging's already stressful as is, so why add additional hassle to it?
Right. I mean, the simple description is this: it does just work. Um, I've chatted with Keith quite a few times during the development of this feature, and now Keith expressed to me that it's not only a time saving, because time savings aren't necessarily exactly a one-to-one comparison, but it's really like the mental capacity saving that this feature provides, that you just don't have to go through all the hoops as you did before.
And it's important too to call out. He mentioned that you don't have to remember to remove those pragma optimizes from your source code before you commit it, right?
So good, yeah.
We definitely heard some developers make have your pragmas making it all the way to the code review stage.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the worst.
And then folks at Halo, said they improve their ability to debug and investigate quicker, which this is what we're all about, right? We want to accelerate people's inner loop of coding and building and debugging so that they can focus on making their game, right? Like that's what they're getting paid to do, right? Is to make
Mhm.
the game. Anything we can do to make them more successful, and this is one of those features, is what we're aiming for.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we want to remove the friction in game development so game devs can do what they do best, focusing on their game. So, well, it's now available in Visual Studio 17.14 Preview 2. You can try out this today, right now. Go and give it a shot. And so, without further ado, we do have a little live demo prepared for everybody. So, let me switch over to Visual Studio as well as the layer sample game.
Going for that good old 60 FPS.
I know,
Had
right?
to do a lot of optimizing for that.
60 FPS. So what you see here is the game running. Um, this is a fully optimized game, and you're not losing any frame rates, right? So what we can do is we have the debugger running already, and let me activate this breakpoints. So, like, remember, this is a optimized build of your game, something that gives you full frame rates. But whenever you set a breakpoint, C++ Dynamic Debugging offers on-demand function deoptimization. So what this means is whenever you put a breakpoint, that particular frame will be deoptimized. As you can see here in the
Cool.
call stack window, we have this deoptimized tag. And with this deoptimized tag, we now unlock quite a few debugging actions that you might be used to for your other projects, but not for your game.
Mhm.
So, as we can see here, we have step into, step over, step out. Right, something previously, if you stepped on this, um, you don't know where the counter is going to go. If it's going to be random or maybe next, right? But okay, let's go into with step into. When you click step into, you'll find out that it actually steps in to the function. And the force inline functions is something that we see here. Something previously was just not possible. This would have all have been optimized away by the optimizer. As you can see here in our call stack window, we have an additional frame that lets us see this operator that was forced inline. Okay, so what we can continue doing is we can press step out. We're back at our code exactly where we were before. And if we step into this one more time, you'll see that we're now in this calculate transform bounds. So in calculate transform bound, once again, this is a function that would have been optimized away. But you're able to see all of this. You can step over, we can press F10 a few times. You can see X1, X2. You can see them in your locals window, right? And here's another cool thing. You can right click and go to set next statement. So once again, this should be familiar for everyone that have debugged other projects, but for game developers, this is a whole new land. You can set next statement, and your counter will go to that next statement, which is x1. And as you can see here, you can even run to cursor, something that was just not possible before.
Dang.
Isn't there? Isn't this awesome?
It's really,
Hello.
really worth pointing out, like, because we see this and we go, well, that looks like normal debugging, right? But like previously, what would happen is, especially if you stepped in or stepped out, it could take you to some random place in source, right? You have no
Right.
idea where it's gonna send you. But now it's like, well, this is just normal now. So
Cool. It's predictable. Like,
Yeah. And that's what we want. I mean, we're not necessarily adding a lot here, but really unlocking all those familiar debugging actions that that made the Visual Studio debugger so great. But now you
Mhm.
can have it on your optimized builds.
Yeah. I mean, you're addressing all the paper cuts. It's like they may not seem all that big, but like
Mhm.
those paper cuts add up and they hurt. So,
Yeah, every time you gotta add a pragma, optimize, and recompile,
oh, and then remember to take it down before you commit your code.
that's a lot of coffee breaks,
Right.
Yeah,
It's 2 a.m. You're probably gonna forget you're on
yeah.
caffeine cup number 25.
All right, so let's go back to our demo. We can actually come here, step out, and what we can see here is if you notice a cost stack that we only de-optimize functions that you care about for the performance of your application. For example, here, we can even go into this slide, physics core.dll, right? So here again, you see the familiar message. Variable is optimized away. The scene variable is just not there. We did change the error message to be a little bit less frustrating. So with this, we'll let you know that you can make this function de-optimized to see it again. So to do that, you can take this frame, you can select with control, or you can just shift and select all of your frames higher up, um, from your first de-optimized to this higher up frame. And with all these selected, you can right click, de-optimize on next entry. Once you do that, you can press F5, and then your code will execute. We can now navigate back to this and see scene. You can now inspect your variable scene. This is something that you can do, so that you can finally control which part of the code you want de-optimize and which code that you don't want de-optimize. If we look at the breakpoints window, we have stored all these 5 new breakpoints that we have added
Mhm.
into a breakpoint group.
Like
If
in the
we,
breakpoint group plug.
yep, breakpoint group. If you use this, the red X, if we delete this, and if we deactivate the initial breakpoint, so now there's no breakpoints, if we press continue, and we can see our game is now back to full FPS.
Sweet.
Yeah,
That is
and
really cool. So
that's
and
it.
I didn't even realize you could get that selective about what you're choosing to optimize or de-optimize. Like, I didn't know if you could just select multiple frames in the call stack and be able
Yeah.
to go from there. That's pretty neat.
So what's really neat is if you think about like, okay, if we had done that same set of steps in the old world, right? Like if we had like had to put a pragma optimize, say in a header file, right? Okay, well now we might be looking at an hour-long build to go from the optimized to de-optimized, and then another hour-long build to go from the de-optimized to the optimized back, right? Because you still want to be running full frames. And in this and here, it just took, a minute or two to do all those
Yeah.
things.
Sweet. I mean, I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, are there any existing, like, limitations to all this, or are there improvements to come?
Yes. There's some current limitations, and I'll cover that in the slides. Once again, for everybody out there, you can try this out today. The QR code will take you to aka.ms/dynamic debugging, which we have a very detailed blog of how you can use this and how you can make it work on your projects.
Is this enabled by default?
It is not enabled by default, so you will have to go into the settings to enable this. But hopefully you'll never need a debug build in the future ever again. That's at least our wish.
Yeah, this should show up as a setting in your project and your property pages for your project. It's just a switch you just turn on, and then it's enabled.
Yeah.
You do a
Right.
rebuild after that.
And remember, like, while this is very, very useful for game developers who are always building optimized builds, this is not only for game development. So maybe you're working on a C++ application that does need the optimizer. This is a way for you to debug your program now. So we showed how with dynamic debugging, you can now see your variables in your local and your watch window. We showed your very familiar debugging actions that you can use on your project now, including your stepping functions, de-optimize your next entry to fine tune the frames that you want to de-optimize. Of course, Leslie, as you mentioned, there are some consideration to this mode. In our tests with a modified UE5 layer sample, we have saw some file output increases as well as build time increases. However, we want to emphasize that it is our goal for everyone that you're still winning a lot on overall iteration time because all of these are in the background. We are literally building your binaries twice, so that's why you might see some output size increases, but this will fundamentally change your workflow, so you don't have to keep rebuilding. And what this means is your overall iteration time will start coming down fast. Some other requirements. This is only available for the x64 architecture, and it does not currently support link time code generation, profile guided optimization, ICF, and incremental linking. And we have also worked with our middleware partners. For those of you who are developing for Xbox, you'll be able to use this in the upcoming April update for Xbox GDK. For those of you out there using Incredibuild, Incredibuild 1024 fully supports C++ dynamic debugging. We have a fast build PR out currently. And for Unreal Engine developers, this will be natively supported in UE 5.6 for both Unreal Build Tool and Unreal Build Accelerator. So if you go to our blog, there will be a lot more information on how to get it to work. So yeah, that was C++ dynamic debugging.
That is exciting to see. I mean, it feels like a game changer, and, I mean, judging by the feedback that you've been getting from some pretty big developers already, like Rare. Shoot, I was a Rare fan as a kid. Um, that I think that's really cool, just how impactful something as simple as just making it so that debugging feels normal
Yeah,
is like, we take it for granted, but, like, if when you don't have the normal debugging experience, I imagine that's taking something that's a process that's already frustrating just into a
yeah.
camp that's, like,
Well,
no one
well,
wants to touch it.
when I was writing C++ code daily, and like one of the most frustrating things I came across, and these weren't games, these were just generic C++ programs. It was like the release only bug. It's the bug that only happens because the race condition happens to be whenever things are going fast, right? And
Right.
it was always so frustrating. You have to resort to printf debugging or like uh,
Right.
things that were the state of
Like a
art
stop and
debugging
start and
50
yeah.
years ago, right?
Mhm.
Like now, like, if I could have just turned this on and like been able to debug this real thing that's sitting out there, man, that would have saved me days and days and days worth of work.
Well, Michael and David, thank you so much for sharing that. That seems like a really big deal. I think you were downplaying it a little bit. It seems like like this could be quite impactful to a lot of people. So we'll also post the link in the description below.
Yes.
So check that out. But otherwise, yeah, scan that QR code or go to that AKA link and get started with your dynamic debugging experience, especially game
Yeah,
devs out there.
and then let us know how it goes. Shoot us an email, find us on X or whatever platform you can find us, and let us know how you like it.
Yeah,
Sweet.
this is just the beginning of a new adventure for us. We'll definitely rely on all your feedback to make this even better.
Well, thanks, Michael and David, and thanks to the audience for watching. Go try it out. And until next time, happy coding.